Now that I finally got some time to work on this, here is the overalls of all the teams in this coming up 2017 PFA season. It's going to show each division, their overalls on offense, defense, their combined overall, and where they rank overall in the entire league. If you saw my one last year, it'll be pretty much the same thing, only this one will be much more cleaner and stuff like that compared to last year. Now, of course, I don't know what it is, but I think, even though this is the exact same setup and mathematical calculation that I did last year, the teams this year just don't really seem right at all. And you're going to see as we go on how really weird this is. So first up, we're going to start with the National South. National East, I mean. So first up is the National East. And as you can see, the teams are set based upon where they finished last year. So the division lead in Washington, overall offense is 78, which is probably right around where it's at. And defense 85, that's way up there. But because of that terrible defense, they're ranked number 33. And they're like a borderline best team in the league. So yeah, as you see already, right off the bat, really screwy. Boston, the worst team in the league, which I find very hard to believe that they're a playoff team. And they didn't really play it bad at all, so I don't really agree with that. And as you see, Philadelphia, the 5th worst team in the league, which that's bullshit. And what's even more bullshit is their defense being better than their offense, which is completely bullshit since their offense was much better than their defense. So I don't know what the hell's up with that. Cleveland, the number 1 team last year, remember, with I believe they had the number 1 defense, and boy did they shit the bed this year. Went all the way down to 15th since you saw what happened last year when they had the injury bug infecting them. And, of course, Manhattan really jumped up last year. I actually think they were around middle of the pack, so they probably rank around the exact same where they were last year. But that offense, really good at defense, okay, even though it really wasn't that good, although they did have some good defensive players. So far this year, the National East does not look like a very good division, at least on paper, but I don't agree with it at all. And Manhattan, surprisingly being the worst team last year, actually has the best rated overall team. Now, of course, on this list, Washington, I believe, is the best team. They're a borderline contender for the National Conference title, with Philadelphia and Manhattan being a contender for maybe a wild card, with Boston being right behind, but Cleveland, I think, are probably going to struggle throughout the year. Now we take a look at the National Central, and here is where it gets really, really weird. Omaha, remember, the defended champion, 35th best overall. That is completely and utter horseshit. This game, the mathematical formula really underrated their offense for who knows what reason. But how about this? Denver, the number 2 best team in the league, which they actually tied Birmingham as the number 1 team overall. But according to the formula, Birmingham was better, which is not really that surprising, Denver being up there. Omaha actually being the 5th best team, which, of course, that defense being better than offense, completely and utterly horseshit. Milwaukee being around 16th place, yeah, that's where I'd put them. And Louisville got a big jump compared to last year, but they're still like 27th place. Although that defense better than that offense, I'm quite a little skeptical about that. But yeah, they got Denver right. I don't think they're number 2, but they're right up there as like a contender for the national. I think the national conference title. Omaha, they really got wrong there. They're nowhere near that bad for the defending champion. They didn't have that big of a collapse. And, of course, Indianapolis way too good, although I think they could be a challenger for maybe a wild card spot this year. And Milwaukee and Louisville are probably like around where they're at. And then we get to the National South, with Birmingham being the number 1 team, according to the projection this year, instead of Cleveland, with the number 1 defense overall. Can you believe that? And that is perfectly spot on. I don't know about the number 1 defense, but their defense is definitely up there as the best in PFA. And San Antonio having the number 1 offense for the 2nd year in a row, which I find a little hard to believe. Although that offense is really good, I don't think it's probably nowhere as good as like Omaha. And Omaha probably should be more like number 1. But that defense is still a major problem, which is why even though there's such a good offense, they're 6th place. I don't know why the overall thing got wrong. They're not ace. Their overall is not A6. It's way lower than that. And Atlanta, They were, remember, Atlanta was the worst team last year. This year, they're only 38th. So even though they had an incredible season, remember last year they started off 6-0 and they finished 9-9. Although they didn't finish well, they still are way better than 38th place. I don't know why it screwed them up that badly. Their offense should be way better than that too. And Jacksonville, 20th place. That's not bad with that really good offense too. That defense still needs a lot of work. And Tampa, being the second worst team last year, defense is slightly better than their offense, which I guess is maybe correct, but 29th place overall. So yeah, they got Birmingham right. They're not the number 1 team, I don't think. San Antonio right up there, Atlanta right up there. I mean, should be way up higher than that. They should be like around the middle of the pack at least, like where Jacksonville's at, and Tampa's probably like where they're at. So yeah, Birmingham is obviously the best team in the division, and one of my favorites to win the national conference. Atlanta and San Antonio are favorites for a wild card spot, and Jacksonville and Tampa are going to be way in the back. But that's really interesting to think that in the National South you have the number 1 offense and defense in the same division. Since remember last year, the number 1 offense was Cleveland. No, actually, number 1 offense was San Antonio. Number 1 defense was Cleveland. San Antonio kept the number 1 offense this year, but Birmingham took the number 1 defense. That is really interesting. I'm looking forward to when those two played each other twice in 2017. And then we finish up the National Conference with the National West with Hawaii, being 39th place. And that is completely and utter horseshit that they have like one of the worst defense in the league. They have like one of the best defensive players in the league, Wilson Sharp. So that defense should nowhere be as bad as that. So that's fucked up. Los Angeles being right around there in the middle of the pack, way a little too lower than they should be. Oakland got a major boost on that defense because that defense was pretty well this year. But even getting Ruben Williams for that trade with San Francisco wasn't enough to boost that terrible offense. Phoenix, I think their stand should be a little bit higher, but they're pretty much exactly where they're at. Same goes for Portland, although that 31st rank is definitely not good. And just like last year, this is like one of the worst divisions in the league. But I think overall, Phoenix and Los Angeles will be fighting out for the title, with Portland being a contender. Hawaii could be a contender too, and possibly Oakland as well with that improved defense and obviously better offense, although it still has some problems. So this division could be interesting, but again, still, it's not correct how the standings are placed. These teams are, except maybe Oakland, but everyone else is way, way, way better than the scenes they are. That is just wrong, especially Hawaii's defense. That is pitiful. After that, we start with the Central Conference with the Century East, with Baltimore being number 1 on this list with a really even offensive defense, which I find a little bit odd. I think they should have a little bit better points in both regards as they're around the middle of the pack, which is really surprising. Buffalo being around middle of the pack, that's fine, but here's where it gets really weird. Cincinnati, 8th place? Come on, they were like one of the worst teams last year. That's definitely not right. Columbus has one of the worst, tied Louisville as one of the worst teams last year. They're probably like around okay. Their offense definitely better at defense. Pittsburgh definitely better defense than their offense, but only 13th place? Oh, come on. That's ridiculous. They're definitely up there in the rank. Because remember, I think they and Baltimore, along with Miami, are my favorites to win the National Conference. So, once again, this is really screwed up. Pittsburgh, Baltimore should be way higher. Buffalo's around okay. Same goes for Columbus, but Cincinnati way off. They're nowhere near the best team in the division. And then we get to the Century Central, and wow, what a difference a year makes. Although this thing's a little bit misleading, but let me tell you all something. For all of you who don't know, last year, this division was, according to the rankings, the worst division in the league. The best team was Kansas City, which was I think 7th place or something like that. Everyone else, second best team was 20, less than 20 or under. So Kansas City was the only good team in the division, and it was so heavily biased towards them. I thought they were going to go all the way to the PFA Bowl 1 because of it. But then, of course, a year later, Chicago would go to PFA Bowl 1, and of course, Kansas City had that terrible start, but they still had a really good finish, along with the incredible defenses in Minneapolis and the incredible offense in Oklahoma. Detroit was terrible, but let's take a look at the stats now. Chicago, better defense than their offense, yeah. 7th rank, I think that's around okay. They're definitely up there, but I don't know about 7th place. Detroit, though, although they were one of the worst teams last year, they're in the top 20. That's definitely not right. Kansas City, they're up there, 9th place, which is not bad. But the weird thing is, their offense is better than their defense? Come on, that's bullshit. Their defense is way better than their offense. If the overall, offense and defense's numbers switched around, their offense being 81, their defense 87, then that would probably be spot on, but there's no way their offense is better than their defense. And here's where it gets really weird. Minneapolis, third best team. That defense, yeah, that's definitely a really good defense, but that 83 offense? Come on, that's bullshit. They are nowhere near top 3 team in the league, even with that really good defense. And Oklahoma, really good offense that's really underrated according to that overall. That defense, that defense is way too better than it should be. That defense was not good at all whatsoever. And 10th place, that's way too high. So overall, Chicago's around right, Minneapolis too high, Kansas City around right, Oklahoma a little bit too high, Detroit way too high. So on paper, from being the worst division last year to this being like the best one so far, we still got 2 more divisions to go. This is still a little bit too surprising. Like I said, I'm going to get some more stats as we finish up the last 2 divisions. Next up is the Century South, with Dallas being 22nd overall. That's really not, that's way off. And then, of course, Houston, with their defense being slightly better than their offense, I guess it's okay, but I think their team overalls and stuff are way higher than they should be. 20th place, though, I think that's around right. Miami, this is where they really screwed up. 24th best team in the league, and their offense 84 and their defense 81? Come on, man. This team is way better than that. This is, like I said earlier, but Miami, along with Pittsburgh and Baltimore, are my favorites to win the National Conference, for crying out loud. They should be way, way, way up there instead of that 24th place. And, of course, when you look at New Orleans, oh, God. New Orleans, 85 offense and defense, and the 4th best team in the league? Something's not right. They're definitely not that good. They were like the worst team in the playoffs last year. Remember, they got destroyed 31-7 at home against Baltimore in the wild card last year, for crying out loud. And they actually allowed more points than they scored, for crying out loud. They got blown out badly throughout the season in their losses, pretty much. So this team is definitely nowhere top 5, let alone number 4. They're not even top 10 or 15 probably either. And Orlando, I think they're spot on at 25th place with that really good offense. So they got New Orleans way overrated. Miami and Dallas are way underrated. Houston and Orlando are about exactly where they should be, though. And then we finally finishing off with the Century West with El Paso, who, remember, I believe was the 2nd best team last year. Have they fallen because of their terrible season last year? They're 23rd place, which is around okay, but I don't agree with that defense being better than their offense. That's way off. Las Vegas, 33rd place. I agree with their defense not being that good. Their offense is a little bit underrated, though, so that's probably why their ranking is so low, because that's kind of wrong for them to be rated that low. San Diego are just as bad. Well, not just as bad. They're way better than New Orleans, but they're definitely not a good playoff team. But 34, nah, that's way, way, way too low. They definitely should be like in the 20s. San Francisco, what the fuck are they? What is wrong with this thing, man? One of the worst defense in the league? San Francisco was another, like, one of the top 5 teams last year, and they still had a winning season, but their defense was way better than their offense last year, which is funny because their offense was actually, overall-wise, on paper, more better than their defense, but their defense played better. There's no way that defense, not only is it not as bad as their offense, there's no way it's 78. That's way terrible. Like, at 78, you're talking about very, very, very bad. And for all of you who don't understand, when it comes to, like, Madden, because these are overalls based upon, like, low 70s and stuff, that's bad. Like, around mid-80s, that's good. And then when you get up to, like, 86 and 87, stuff like that, you're talking about really, really, really good. So the fact that San Francisco is considered the 4th worst team in the league and their average, that's bullshit. And then finally finished off Seattle. There's no way they're the best team in the division. This team is like one of the worst teams in the league for crying. Look how terrible they were last year. That defense being that good? Get the fuck out of here. That defense was garbage. That offense was garbage. The whole team was garbage. Matter of fact, I even think I predicted them to go 1-17 last year. That's how bad they were on paper for crying out loud last year. So yeah, there's no way Seattle's the best team in the division. That's way off. Matter of fact, pretty much everyone except maybe El Paso is wrong. They underrated they underrated Las Vegas, San Diego, and San Francisco. That's how bad it was. So those are the overalls of each team in the league. Now, I got some stats to tell you about. Compared to last year, like I said, the number 1 team on paper was Cleveland, along with the number 1 defense. And San Antonio had the number 1 offense last year. And neither of them made the playoffs, of course. Remember, Cleveland actually shit the bed and had a losing record because of injuries. And of course, now this year, Birmingham's the number 1 team with the number 1 defense, and San Antonio still remains with the number 1 offense. I don't know about Birmingham having the number 1 defense, although they're right up there. San Antonio, now I don't agree with them having number 1 offense, although they're definitely top 5 best offense in the league. So, we'll see what happens there. Now, here's a top 5 list of the best teams in the league, and I'm going to do the worst ones later. So, the top 5 best teams are number 5, Indianapolis, number 4, New Orleans, number 3, Minneapolis, number 2, Denver, number 1, Birmingham. Birmingham, no, I don't think they're number 1 team, but they're definitely up there. Denver, I don't know about top number 2 either, but they're definitely up there. Minneapolis, no, they're around middle of the pack. New Orleans, no, they're nowhere near that good. And Indianapolis is definitely nowhere near that good. And matter of fact, if you think about it, 3 of these teams, the top 5, did make the playoffs. One of them, Minneapolis, had 500. And remember, Indianapolis went 7-11 last year. That's definitely not right. So, the top 5 best teams are definitely not right. But then we get down to the worst teams in the league. This gets even worse. How about this? First off, the 6th worst team is Omaha. Think about that. The defending champion, 6th worst team in the league. That's definitely off. But number 5 worst teams in the league: Philadelphia, San Francisco, Atlanta, Hawaii, and Boston being the worst team in the league. San Francisco and Boston had winning records. Atlanta was at 500. So was Hawaii too. And Philadelphia was 8-10, and they were not that far off. And come on, Philadelphia had like one of the more explosive offenses in the league. It's just that their defense shit the bed a couple times when they didn't need it to happen. San Francisco was on the verge of a playoff appearance, for crying out loud. Atlanta was 6-0. They were the worst team last year, and they actually did an incredible turnaround to go 6-0. They had a really good offense. Yeah, they shit the bed later on in the year, but they're definitely not as bad. 3rd worst team in the league. Hawaii, no, they're not the worst team in the league, and neither is Boston. So the top 5 best teams in the league is wrong, and the top 5 worst teams are way off. The best teams in the league, I would say, are Washington, Omaha, Denver, Birmingham, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, Chicago. Kansas City is probably like on the verge, but I'm not quite sure yet. Miami, and that's pretty much it. Those are like the very best like teams that I think are like contenders to win conference titles. And the worst teams in the league are Louisville, Tampa, not Oakland, Cincinnati, Columbus, Detroit, and Seattle. Those are like the worst teams in the league, and they're not even anywhere really close to where they're supposed to be. But remember, like last year, the overalls don't necessarily mean any sort of success, because remember, last year, the best teams in the league were Cleveland, El Paso, Las Vegas, San Francisco, Kansas City, and guess what all those teams had in common? None of them made the playoffs. In fact, the best team in the league, Cleveland, had a losing record, for crying out loud. Remember? That was because of injuries, but still, they had a losing record. El Paso was the 2nd best team in the league, I believe. They shit the bed the entire season. That's how bad they were last year. And then the worst teams in the league, stats-wise, Atlanta, who were the worst team. Baltimore, I think there's a couple more, but I don't remember off the top of my head. They went on to have really good records. Fucking Baltimore went 13-5 and made to the playoffs, for crying out loud. And they are a contender to win I think the Century Conference this year. So don't take these overalls really seriously, like I'm not this year. I'm sure a bunch of those teams ranked at the top of the list are going to probably shit the bed or be around like 500 or something like that, which are much more likely. And the teams worse on the list, they might be a playoff contender, or they might be around 500, which I think is much more likely. I think there's some teams on this list that are ranked way too high that are probably going to have terrible seasons, and there are teams that are ranked way too low that are going to have awesome seasons. So that's it for this video. Now, next up, before I begin the season, will be my predictions for the season. However, I'm not going to do that yet until I finish updating the site. Right now, I'm on my site, updating the 2016 schedule to make it look a little bit more like the NFL schedule page on their site. And I'm going to still got to do the 2017 schedule, add that in. And I might also add in like template for like the players and stuff on each team, stuff like that. So it might be a while still before that the 2017 season happens. But get ready, guys. It's coming very soon. After almost a year, I'm looking forward for the 2017 PFA season.